Alrighty, well, we have a couple of different press conferences lined up this evening. You've got radical climate environmental freak Steven Guilbeault is pretty much told by a reporter, it turns out the carbon tax has been proved by the PBO that it's not what you're saying. What do you have to say in response to that? And then we have an exclusive interview with Pierre Poilievre where he sits down and kind of leaves the reporter a little bit speechless. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage y'all to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. And just check to see if you are still subscribed, if you think that you have or know that you have in the past, because YouTube does this weird thing on channels that they might not like, where they unsubscribe people. And without further ado, let's get into it. So we're going to start off with this clip from Steven Guilbeault here, who defends the carbon tax after a reporter really questions him.
The overall conclusion from the PBO, from his briefing, from his report, is that, yeah, we made an error, but largely the conclusion was the same. When you look at the economic costs, when you look at the household costs, you're paying more. So essentially they were right. Do you agree with that? Do you agree that this was not a really big mistake?
That's not what this report says. And the report also says that he acknowledges that he does not take into account the economic benefits that are resulting from carbon pricing in Canada and those benefits to households, that he doesn't take into account the economic impacts to households of climate change and natural catastrophes going up in this country, and hopefully in future reports he will be able to do that. But I think the first paragraph of this report is very clear. More Canadians get more money back than what they pay for carbon pricing.
Mr. Poilievre is also claiming victory today because he's saying he's pulling a different paragraph from the PBO's report, which says that people in the backstop provinces will see a net cost and will pay more in the federal fuel charge and related GST, as well as receiving lower incomes compared to the Canada carbon rebate that they're going to get back. So is there a flaw in this PBO report?
No, you have to look at the entire report, and the entire report says that when you look at direct costs, if you want to look at indirect cost, then you have to look at the cost of climate change. You have to look at the benefits of putting in place carbon pricing and the tens of billions of dollars that are resulting of that. If you want to do indirect, then you have to look at everything. But if you're looking at direct costs, this is what the PBO report says. Merci beaucoup.
So this is what's so conflicting is within the PBO report, there are two separate angles that show that it helps people, and then another one shows that it goes against people and causes the average household a significant financial impact or burden. And I just want to settle this. I mean, I've done so many different polls on this channel, but let me know down in the comments, do you get more back than what you put into the carbon tax? Yes or no? Now let's move on to the next clip here. This guy is just under so much fire. It's really funny to watch the Liberals free fall in a total panic session.
The PBO report also says that the industrial price on pollution is not only less costly, but it also reduces emissions by significantly more than the consumer price. Is there a way, why can't you, get rid of the consumer price and just strengthen the industrial price to make up for those emissions at a much lesser cost?
Our plan has more than 100 measures, and no single measure will enable us to achieve our 2030 targets. We need everything. And the consumer portion of carbon pricing is very important. It's going to provide at least 13 million tons. That's the equivalent of removing from our road 26 million vehicles by 2030. It's an important component. Yes, the industrial system gives us more emission reduction, but we need everything to get
less costly. So why not make up those emissions by strengthening the industrial one?
We are doing that. We've strengthened the industrial pricing system a little over a year ago. We're looking at what we could do furthermore going into the future. But if I start removing measures, then you'll be the first one to tell me, well, Minister, you're going further away from your targets. That simply doesn't work.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that he's winning over anybody with this whole carbon tax and price on pollution. Like, there isn't one single person, whether you're a Liberal, whether you're an NDP supporter, it doesn't matter. Look, it's been asked many, many, many times. It's not about denying the climate. It has got nothing to do with that. Taxes are not going to fix the weather. It doesn't make any sense. You even have the head figure, the person who has the biggest companies in the world that are electric, which is what all governments are trying to push. The leader of the liberal mentality, at least, Elon Musk, who has said on the record several times to the point where it's extremely annoying, we can't afford to switch over to electric immediately. Like, it doesn't make any sense. We don't have the infrastructure to do that. And then on top of adding these taxes on pollution, on carbon, like, it's so ridiculous, man. That might make sense in that there's such a thing as you could have a good idea at the wrong time in history. Now, I'm not saying the carbon tax is a good idea, but I'm saying that maybe a tax to, let's add, instead of the carbon tax, it's the same tax or maybe less when our economy is thriving. And that tax goes into our defense budget to upgrade our military, to maybe other things, right? Like, maybe that would make more sense. But again, it's not the right time in history. We are struggling. We are paying $12 for a small pack of blueberries. That doesn't make any sense, man. Like $7 for a carton of eggs. Like, what the hell is going on? And they're worried about taxing the weather. Get out of here. Now we're going to take a look at this interview with Pierre Poilievre, where he sits down with a reporter. This is a good one, so I hope you stick around for this full thing here.
Poilievre is in the city right now. Yesterday, he made an announcement related to terrorism. He joins us live now in studio. Sir, it's really nice to see you. We certainly have a lot to talk about. I would like to start talking about the pharmacare bill that just went through the Senate, because this is a newer development, and we understand what's going to happen next with this bill. There are going to be conversations with the federal government and provinces and territories that would see certain medications covered now, for example, diabetes. I'd like to get your take on this, because I know you have concerns with this plan. And I'm curious, for Canadians who might start to rely on this plan to get their drugs covered, how could they be affected if your party forms government?
Well, I suspect there will be very few people affected at all, because the vast majority, well over 90% of Canadians, are already covered with private plans. And we support that. We also support ideas that would fill in the gaps for the very, very small minority of people who don't have drug coverage and can't afford medication. Unfortunately, this bill does not do that. In fact, it does something very troubling that nobody's talking about. It pushes for something called a single-payer system. Now, what does that mean? It means that only the government would be allowed to be that single payer and provide drug coverage. So if you are a union worker whose union has negotiated for you a drug plan, in the long run, this bill seeks to eliminate that plan and force you onto a government plan. And we saw when Kathleen Wynne tried to do that provincially, it ended up giving people worse coverage than they had before, all while building up a big bureaucracy. We also worry about companies saying, well, listen, if the government's going to have a plan, then they'll drop their workers from the workplace plan, and end up meaning people will get far fewer drugs covered than they had before. So a lot of people are going to be very concerned when they start seeing that this plan, far from giving new coverage, is going to take away coverage that they already have. And I will never allow that to happen.
So as a result, because of some of your concerns, would you scrap this plan then if your party forms government?
We were not going to have a single payer system that bans you and union workers and countless other people from keeping the excellent private plans they already have. And Trudeau and the NDP, frankly, they risk, if you vote for them, you risk losing your drug plan and getting a badly run, extremely expensive, slow government plan to replace it. And I think that's a terrible idea.
You mentioned...
And this is the difference between the Conservatives and kind of all of the other federal parties, is that Pierre, the Conservative Party, they are pro having like a multiple or two-tier system where there's the government public route that's subsidized by your taxes, and that has nothing to do necessarily with, income. You could be lower income, you qualify. You could be mid or higher income, you can still qualify, but it's the public version. It's the government version. And then there's the private sector. And the government of Canada has really tried to eliminate the private sector on so many different fronts, but specifically with our healthcare. I mean, if you have the money, if you're able to do a GoFundMe and get the money for a health plan for yourself, whatever it is for somebody else, then you should be able to to go through a private system. And this is what really, really bothers me is Canada is heading into a third world type of structure here. Like it's insane. You've got other countries that they are huge on medical tourism. We have amazing, beautiful, beautiful, vast land. And if you get rid of the homeless and the drugs, or you not get rid, but like if you solve the homeless and the drug crisis and you just focus on the buildings and the scenery, we have some of the most amazing cities. Like Vancouver is phenomenal. Get rid of all of the crap in the streets, all of that eyesore, and focus on the views. Now just think of a time where we could potentially have medical tourism. You've got people coming in, maybe $10,000, $20,000 for a weekend procedure, right? Whatever it is. Okay, you need some surgery done. You get posted up into a hotel in Vancouver. You got a nice view of the ocean. You get your meals. You go to a nice private healthcare system. Everything's done. A week of rest, and boom, back to your country you go. See, Canadians are doing that in other countries. So we're losing a lot of money here. Like, we're not run as a proper business. And I did post on X recently. I said, because I've now been informed that Canada is actually a corporation, not a country. Not to sound too conspiratorial or anything, but there's a lot of backing or evidence that backs that Canada is not really a legitimate country. We're actually a corporation. It's a whole other thing. I'm still learning about it. Not to sound like a babbling idiot, but I would like to dabble a little bit in that in the future. But nonetheless, we're just so mismanaged here. The fact that people can't get their procedures, medical procedures done here, and they're going to other countries for like a week or 2 weeks, paying 10, 20,000 USD or whatever the cost is, right? And then you have that whole medical tourism. We'd add so much value to our Canadian economy. Businesses would be thriving. All that money that's made by the private facilities would be injected, would be jobs, infrastructure, and it'd be put back into our economy. It'd be taxed appropriately. We would have more money here, man. And that's what I freaking hate about the Liberals and the NDPs. They don't want that. They want you sucking at the government teat. And that's just not going to work. The government is so heavily mismanaged by the direct people that want you hooked on to the IV of which the government is. And this guy right here, Pierre Poilievre, is saying, nah, let's get rid of you can have the government route, but then also the free and fair market, the private market, right? Let's go. And I feel like that would fix so many problems in Canada.
Gaps that you would like to see filled as a result of this. What would that look like then?
Well, there are, like I said, well over 90% of Canadians already have drug plans. There are a tiny minority of people who are not already covered by social assistance or by their workplace plan that might need some assistance. I think we should find out who they are. Mm-hmm. Instead, the government takeover Trudeau and the NDP Liberals are planning takes all the 90% of people that have plans, throws them off their plans, and says, well, one day we'll give you a government plan that will be that will replace it. I think that is crazy. Why not just find the people who don't have coverage and help them?
Mm-hmm. I also want to talk about your announcement from yesterday. So we were in Toronto talking about this push for the government to put the Houthis listed as a terrorist organization. Mm-hmm. You also mentioned this is something we've seen the United States do. They did this earlier this year.
January.
We talked to or reached out to the public safety minister. They say they're talking with their allies. They're still looking at adding different groups to the list. What would this actually mean, though, this designation? How could this make Canadians feel safer and actually be safer?
Well, there's two groups that I want banned right now. One is the Houthis. They're the ones that operate on behalf of Iran in the Gulf of Aden and in the Red Sea. They're firing missiles at civilians. They've attacked civilian transport ships and they've fired hundreds of missiles at civilians. They are a front for the Iranian dictatorship. And they're legal. Right now, they wanted to raise money, recruit, operate on Canadian soil. They could do it legally. I'm saying we have Section 8305 of the Criminal Code that allows the minister to list terrorist organizations as banned entities in Canada, ban the Houthis so they don't come to Canada, just like the IRGC did. They sent 700 agents to Canadian soil to harass the Persian and Jewish population, and it took Trudeau 6 years to ban them. We should ban not only the IRGC but the Houthis. Then there's the Samadoun. These are the people out burning our flags, throwing bombs at and Molotov cocktails at synagogues, fomenting hatred against Jews on Canadian streets. They should be banned as a terrorist organization because they are a proxy for other banned terrorist entities. So ban the terrorists, keep our people safe, put Canada first for once.
You talked about anti-Semitism. This is a huge issue everywhere right now, but especially in the GTA. Our chief was just talking about this last week. We're seeing a rise in anti-Semitism, rise in Islamophobia. When it comes to hate speech, hate crimes, do you think there needs to be a clearer definition on that and maybe even tougher penalties? Because this is a huge issue and it doesn't seem to be going away.
Well, it was never like this before Trudeau. Let's keep in mind we've had wars in the Middle East for centuries, and we never saw it spill over onto Canadian streets. We never saw fire bombings of synagogues or bullets flying through Jewish school children's the windows. That never happened, but Trudeau has pushed a dangerous and divisive ideology that separates people into different groups.
And because of this, it's almost like there's been a war that is waged on Canada. It might not look in the conventional sense of a foreign government with, you know, the right amount of military gear coming door to door here in Canada and waging war. But yeah, I would say that there's a very strong argument. It sounds like Pierre Poilievre would also say that there's a very strong argument to be made that Canada is under a form of siege, that there is a war that's waged here on Canadians, and the freaking Liberal federal government are the ones that are allowing it. And there's another argument to make that they're the ones that are instigating it, because they're not denouncing these terrorist groups. They're saying, hey, look, they have a freedom of right and expression to say death to Canada here in Canada and then burn a Canadian flag in front of police officers in a major city in this country. Like, that's just insane that that's going on. And it breaks my heart, right? Like, so many people are just devastated to see that, you know, you can go to jail, you can get criminally charged for burning a rainbow colored flag, but burning a Canadian flag, nothing, no penalty. Like, that doesn't make any freaking sense. What about a hate crime? Isn't that a hate crime? It's a hate against Canadians. Isn't that a hate crime?
His border policies have been reckless, allowing numerous ISIS terrorists to come into this country. He's allowed Samadoun to continue to foment anti-Semitic hatred on the streets. And that's the consequence we have after 9 years of Trudeau. We have a 251% increase in hate crimes. 251% increase in hate crimes after 9 years of Trudeau. We need to get rid of this ugly ideology, secure our borders, ban the terrorists, and unite our people, bring people together. Make this again the country that we were promised, where it doesn't matter if your name is Martin or Mohammed, Smith, Singh, or Steinberg. We're all Canadians. We have one set of common shared values and common freedom.
Do you think, though, people take the charges seriously enough? Because in talking with the police locally, they say, you know, these are extensive investigations they have to roll out.
I don't think any criminals take any charges seriously after 9 years of Trudeau and the NDP Liberals. They know that even if they're caught, they'll be released on bail within minutes. We saw the guy who shot the police officer last week. He was out on bail after violating his probation orders 24 times. So, the Trudeau catch and release criminal justice system signals to criminals, you can do whatever you want. You can terrorize, you can attack, you can kill, you can rape, and you will be out on bail within minutes to do it all over again. We need to get rid of that catch and release, bring in jail, not bail, mandatory prison sentences to lock up the criminals and stop the crime.
On bail reform.
That shouldn't be controversial, yet somehow it is. Like Pierre said, you can commit crimes, you can steal cars, you can probably rob a bank and get out on bail if you fit a certain description, which would be, like if you're a good, outstanding citizen, probably not let out on bail that frequently. But if you're like a repeat criminal, yeah, sure. Just rinse and repeat the entire cycle. Like it just doesn't make any sense. It makes me feel loony. It makes me feel like I don't understand the system, but it's just shown time and time again that this is real. This is the reality of Canada. This is where we live. This is all really happening in front of our eyes.
platform. And we know that our Premier, Doug Ford, talked about this last week too, because he's frustrated knowing that the man who's accused of shooting this Toronto police officer had quite a rap sheet, right? So he's saying something needs to be done at the federal level. The justice minister saying, well, it's a provincial matter. It seems like there's a lot of back and forth here. No. How do you get involved in this? How do you change maybe the directive, if that is something that you would like to see change? You just have to repeal Justin Trudeau's bail law. It's C-75. We didn't have these problems before Trudeau. He brought in C-75, which brings in an automatic release on bail for, it's called the principle of restraint. The judges are forced to give the maximum leniency to the newly arrested criminal. And so after 9 years of Trudeau, we have a situation where in Vancouver, the same 40 offenders were arrested 6,000 times in 1 year, 150 arrests per offender per year. I would bring in a law that says if you have a long rap sheet, you will be ineligible for bail, parole, house arrest, or probation. It will be jail, not bail, jail, not bail, when Pierre Poilievre and the common sense Conservatives are in office. We know this is a huge deal, too. I mean, we hear it from people every single day. Yeah. So we'll certainly be following up on that one. I also wanted to ask you about some comments Donald Trump made about looking at renegotiating the USMCA, this agreement that was just negotiated when he was president. If you become prime minister, do you think this is a good thing, taking another look at that agreement? And is there anything that stands out for you that you would like to renegotiate too? I mean, Trudeau fell flat on his face. And I was, as a Canadian, putting partisanship aside, I was really saddened to see the way Trump bulldozed over Trudeau in the last negotiations. Trudeau was forced to sign onto a deal that kept in place tariffs on our softwood lumber, that banned our construction companies from working on American construction projects, that prevented us from getting the Keystone Pipeline built, and the list goes on. I want to get a deal that stands up for Canadian workers, get rid of the softwood lumber tariffs, allow our construction companies access to American job sites as they had under the previous Conservative government when we negotiated that with Obama and Bush. And finally, the big thing that really worries me is Trudeau's 61 cent a litre carbon tax. I think the only person who likes the idea, who loves a Canadian carbon tax of 61 cents a litre more than Trudeau is Trump. Because if we bring in a 61 cent a litre carbon tax, all our businesses are going to go to the States, and they're going to steal our money and jobs. I will axe the carbon tax, pass a bring it home tax cut so that we bring back our businesses, our paychecks, our production, and lower prices for Canadians.
See, Canada should be more pro-Canadian. We should be putting more of our money back into this country. That's properly investing in Canadians, right? And Justin Trudeau, his entire theology is we're going to invest into Canadians on your behalf with or without your consent, and we're going to tax you more, and we're going to do it through all of these different failed social programs that they're just not really working. I think that a lot of people are extremely fed up with Justin Trudeau, the way he's been running this country. I think that a lot of people are flocking to Pierre Poilievre for, a lot of the right reasons. I think it started off as, F Trudeau, we need to go towards somebody else. But ever since, the end of the Freedom Convoy, and Pierre has, been won the Conservative Party leadership role, and he's had more of a national platform to speak, and he's really trimmed the fat off of a lot of his talking points, and he's tailored he's done very good, right? He's done very good. He's got his talking points, and he's doing a phenomenal job. And that's why, I know I normally start off the video with the polls, but just to remind people, that's why he's at 228 projected seats, and that's why Justin Trudeau is at 53 projected seats, because no matter who you are, what your background is, when it comes time to vote federally, people are going to be looking at their bank accounts. They're going to be looking at their paychecks. They're going to be looking at their cost of living. They're going to say, yeah, no, I can't afford this. And, you hear about all this repeat offender stuff, right? It might not affect you where you live. Maybe you live in a remote town or a remote place, or maybe you live on the outskirts of a major city, and it doesn't affect you day to day, but it's there. The numbers do not lie. The statistics are showing that crime is surging to 300% over the past several years. That's not the Canada that I want. I'm sure that's not the Canada that you want. That's not the Canada that you want for your kids, for your grandkids, for the future generations. And so it all needs to be done right now. When it comes time to vote, we need to make an informed decision and vote properly. That's the end of the video, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. On your way out, if you haven't yet already, I highly encourage you guys to smash the like button and subscribe. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.